Where the story goes, we follow. Chris Smith on today's News Talk, TNT Radio.
Okay, it is that time of the week. It is a Wednesday. It is Cyber Wednesday on this program, and we're very, very lucky to have the man from TechAdvice.Life to run us through the latest and greatest international tech and cyber news. Alex Zaharoff-Reutt, welcome back to TNT.
It's really great to be here and with the audience.
How's your Saturday night program going?
Wonderful. I had really good conversations with both a gentleman from a company called Project Manda using AI to alleviate the boredom and drudgery of meetings, and another fellow called Elliot Dellis, who's from a world-class but Australian cybersecurity company called Phronesis Security. So you can see both of those interviews online and some other tech news. Please check it out and please join me this Saturday.
Fantastic. All right. As cybersecurity teams are being hit with burnout due to escalating cyber attacks, with nearly 20% stating burnout and fatigue was a contributing factor. How does a contributing factor to the breach, by the way, how does a business ensure its staff are up to the challenge? Because these attacks are just out of control right across the world.
Well, look, the problem is that there is no work being done in making sure that people's mental wellness is being looked after. People are under attack all the time. For 20 years or 10 years or a number of years, they can do their job, protecting a company, protecting the accounts, protecting the IP, protecting the assets. But the moment there's some sort of big attack, like we saw with Optus and Medibank and a stack of different companies, those cyber security people are in the front line, and they can be attacked in the media by government ministers, by irate customers. I mean, and some of them become suicidal, and they suffer from burnout. So this particular report, this was from a company called Sophos, and their report is the future of cybersecurity in the Asia Pacific Japan region. Their fourth edition. This is the one for 2024, but this is all over the world. I mean, there was a study that showed that in the UK, pre-pandemic, people in the CISO, these Chief Information Security Officer role, they were lasting in the job less than 24 months, and then they were burning out and they were leaving.
Wow.
And when they leave, they become accountants or dog walkers or something completely unrelated to cybersecurity because the stress is so much. And look, my first guest after you on my very first show on Saturday was a gentleman by the name of Peter Coronius from a company called Cyberminds with a Z or a Z.org, launched in Australia in 2022, launched in the US and UK in 23. And the short version is that they are offering companies the ability to understand how to do burnout prevention and recovery. And they've got some new programs that actually help companies to retain their staff, to look after them, to nurture them. Because if they leave, all that corporate knowledge is going out the door. And if they're not helping younger staff to be resilient and also teaching this in university, you're just setting up these young people for failure.
Yeah, very, very true. Yesterday was Safer Internet Day in Australia, and for Californian listeners, it still is. We spoke about this briefly last week, Alex, where I noted that every day should be Safer Internet Day. And there are mistakes that we make that can be fixed up pretty quickly and easily, right?
Yeah, look, I saw an article that listed the top 10 mistakes that you and I and we are all probably making. And just in quick succession, if you use public Wi-Fi, you should use a VPN. I mean, be careful about that. Not changing the privacy settings of your social media apps to higher levels than what they are. Often they're set as the default, and you can be sharing things with people that you didn't want to have shared. Using the same passwords for different accounts, very dangerous.
That's a killer. We do this too often, don't we?
Absolutely. You use the same password for your Disney that you do for your email, and then somebody breaks in and bang, they've got access to all your accounts. People have called me in a panic. I'm locked out of my email. They got this password. They changed that other password. And it's like all they can do is ring, the phone company, the internet company, at the bank, if they've had money taken out. It's a nightmare. And if you use a password manager and use a different password for every account, if there's one breach, all the other dominoes don't fall. So definitely using different passwords for different accounts. If you've got unused accounts, old email accounts or old accounts you're not using, shut them down, close them down. Carelessly clicking any links in emails, SMS messages, social media. Often you can hover the mouse and see what the link is. On some computers, you have to turn that on in the browser. You've got to click click on view and show the status bar so that you can actually see at the bottom of the screen what the link is. If the link looks weird, if it doesn't say Disney.com, if it says something else that's weird, don't click it. Take a picture of it. You can use that free Norton Genie app that will tell you whether it thinks the link is bad or not. So not using multi-factor authentication. Now, some people get an SMS message, but that's unsafe because your SIM card can be hacked and transferred to somebody else. Hard to do, but does happen. I use the Google Authenticator app. It's got a code that changes every 30 seconds. And Microsoft has one of those apps too. Oversharing online. The old story was you told everybody you went on holidays on Facebook and you came back and your house was burgled.
Yes.
So be careful what you overshare. And, some people on their LinkedIn profile, they'll put their birthday or they'll have contact details, phone numbers. I mean, just be very careful what you share. Yeah. Not keeping everything up to date. We talk about updates, the computer, the TV, the phone, the router, your programs. There are ways on a Mac and a PC that you can have not just your operating system up to date, but all the programs as well. Using a firewall. Now, that's normally in your Norton or those sort of programs. But on a Mac, if you don't use one of those Norton type programs, there's a firewall in the system settings. Yep. No one turns it on. It's not on by default. And finally, not being educated about all of these risks. So that's the quick top 10. I'll have all this on my site. I didn't get a chance to put it up, but later today, all this that we're talking about will be there.
Okay, very quickly, it's not a good look. I made mention of this yesterday on the program. It's not a good look for 2024 to find that the estimates, the forecasts for the year indicate that there'll be a $10 billion reduction in the number of devices, right across the gamut of devices, the number of devices purchased. It's a tough year ahead.
It is. And when you have a look at the numbers, I've got some notes here I'm going to look at. Now, the numbers of actual sales still is in the hundreds of billions of dollars, but a lot of these Chinese manufacturers operate on razor-thin margins. I mean, they're not Apple. Apple can have these big fat margins to help fund the future. But just having a look here, given that revenue in 2020 was $670 billion worldwide. Now, 10 billion loss, as we spoke about yesterday, predicted for this year, seems like a drop in the bucket. But of course, as I said, those margins are razor thin. Now, 2021 sales jumped to 730 billion globally for everything to do with tech. But that's obviously because of the pandemic and everybody rushed to buy things for their home. This dropped in 2022 by 40 billion. The market rose last year, 2023, to 720 billion, and this is expected to fall to 710 billion, so a $10 billion drop. Inflation is clearly biting hard. I mean, people still need to replace things and buy things, and companies will do things, but some of these figures might be a bit too over-optimistic. I think it'll fall further. When people are complaining that a sub-$10 McDonald's meal is now sub-$20, just imagine when your iPhone, the top of the line one, instead of being $2,798 or whatever, goes to well over $3,000, you might hang on to your old technology a bit longer, as we've spoken about in the past, because even Google and Samsung are now saying, we'll update your phones for the next 7 years. So they know people are not going to spend as much as they did before.
Yeah, they've woken up to it. They may as well go with the flow. I'll take a quick break and we'll come back and talk about a couple of other issues as well, some breaking news in terms of tech with Alex Zaharoff right after this on TNT.
De-weaponizing weather with reality and perspective.
So I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, because I'm doing a climate roundtable tomorrow. I'm assuming that the network that invited me on is probably the only network that's left around this part of the country that actually allows climate skeptics to be on. It'll be interesting because I'm sure there are going to be some people there to challenge me. In any case, when I walked into the hotel, the person at the front desk was from Adelaide, Australia, the city of churches. See, I learned something, right? And I got to thinking that maybe tomorrow I will spring on the people that are there for almost unprecedented climate events that have occurred around Australia that are very, very important around the climate. Now, not directly with Australia, but north of Australia, the typhoon season, despite the fact that we supposedly had an El Nino going, was way, way below normal. Third lowest ever. That's very unusual. And that was the first hint that this El Nino wasn't what it was cracked up to be. As a matter of fact, the Southern Oscillation Index, which is the longest running metric of the El Nino, never got into El Nino category this year until now. But that was unprecedented when you had what we call the Oceanic Nino Index being so strong. That's two unprecedented things. Number 3, the crash that is occurring in the Southern Oscillation Index is going to be the greatest on record from January to February. In fact, it may be the greatest on record from one month to another. It is unprecedented to see January with an above SOI and then February crashing the way this is. Now, in 1978, we had a weak El Nino going, and then it crashed in February. By the way, they had all those floods in Los Angeles in 78. How about that? The fourth thing, the unprecedented warming of the ocean just to the east of Australia in a month or two. See that? Tonight's Climate and Weather Watchdog was all about Australia. It's because I ran into someone from Adelaide. This is TNT Climate and Weather Watchdog meteorologist Joe Bastardi asking you to enjoy the weather. It's the only weather you got.
You're with Chris Smith on today's News Talk Radio, TNT.
Okay, Alex Zaharoff, Apple's Vision Pro headsets, they're going wild. How wild have they been going?
Pretty amazingly wild. I'll have this later on my site, but if you just go to X and type in Apple Vision Pro, you can see people who are sitting inside of the subway advertising the fact they have a $3,500 headset on, and they're just tapping away and swiping things and moving things. There was a guy who had one in London, had the headset on, and he was walking with an invisible leash. His little robotic dog, it was just walking along. There was another guy who in his house, and it was quite a spectacle. There was another guy who was actually in his Tesla, and he's doing all this stuff and moving things around, and the car's driving autonomously down the road, and people are filming it. There was another one that I saw where cop cars started surrounding him because it's like, he's not paying any attention, although in a Tesla in the States, you've got autonomous driving. There was another guy who was in the gym, somebody else eating with them on, another guy just walking through a mall and swiping things away. And the tagline said, "We're living in an episode of Black Mirror." And it won't be long before, in the next few years, the cost of the headsets will come down, they'll get thinner and smaller. And you won't be able to live in the city a normal life. You'll see directions for public transport, you'll see prices for things, you'll see all sorts of things like we saw in those Minority Report movies and Johnny Mnemonic, where you will need the headset to look around and make sense of the modern world. This is a reality that's coming soon, and it can be good and bad, but I like to look at the positive side of things. I hope it's a golden mirror and not a black mirror.
Yeah, I can't see the negativity in that particular device. I think it's amazing. Okay, I want to talk about lithium batteries, which we know are suspect to catching fire and exploding, etc., which is always a problem. Where is the lithium sector going in terms of making these batteries safer?
Well, look, there's a company in the States. I've interviewed this fellow on before I was on TNT Radio, and I've got to interview him again. He's a guy called Charlie Welch from a company called ZapBat, ZAPBATT.com. He's done a deal with Toshiba to commercialize what's known as lithium titanate battery. So still using lithium. Australia is a big miner of lithium, and the sector is predicted to really boost in 2024. But lithium titanate batteries have been used by the military for decades, and you can hammer them with a nail, you can destroy them. They were used in the military. If the bomb hits the battery and it blows up, you're going to have 2 explosions. So this thing, instead of having 500 to 1,500 cycles that last a year or two before it starts expanding and going bad, this thing can last for 15, 20 years before it needs to be replaced. And then instead of going down to 80% of its power or more, it's 90% plus of its lifespan, even though it's been 10 or 15 years. And it can also operate in much colder temperatures, which would solve the problem of those EVs in Chicago not being able to start and operate in much higher temperatures. So as William Gibson, who wrote the famous novel Neuromancer and also that Amazon show called The Peripheral, said, the future has already been invented. It just hasn't been widely distributed yet. And ZapBat's going to have home appliances, battery powered with this technology this year. We're going to see them. So the beginning of the end of lithium ion is starting, and the beginning of lithium batteries that last 10 times as long as current ones, cost about the same, are virtually indestructible and won't catch fire if a car explodes. That's nearly upon us. And by the end of this decade, we won't have problems, hopefully, with batteries anymore.
End of the decade. Well, hang on a minute. End of the decade. Isn't that where some politicians think we've got to be, because we've all got to be in an EV, despite Toyota saying it won't be more than 30% of the market? I don't understand. I'm very confused by the mixed messages, Alex.
Well, the thing is that the politicians don't know what's really going on the ground. They just have these grand ideas and they make proclamations. King Midas, who commanded the tides to stop coming, quickly discovered that, trying to regulate the free market, it's just nuts. I mean, the communism failure in Russia, 70 years of famine and problems and pogroms and killing people. I mean, that centralized economy just doesn't work. And that's why this Labor government in Australia and the Democrat government in the US, I mean, is destined for one term and that's it. People are sick to death of the crap from these politicians that are trying to give edicts and not, understanding how the world really works.
Yeah, exactly. Now, that everything electric for our Sydney listeners, or maybe our Australian viewers, they can get along this weekend to something that might impress them about EVs, huh?
Absolutely. Well, this was called Fully Charged last year, and they had record attendance according to them. And this year, it's going to be on at the Sydney Showgrounds at Sydney Olympic Park. They're talking about the hottest brands and products, 50-plus sessions in a live theatre delivered by various presenters. You can test drive, they say here, the largest test drive experience with over 100 models available from Polestar, Audi, BMW, Hyundai, Genesis, Renault, MG, BYD, Kia, Tesla, and others. They're going to have the world's first electric surfboard. I don't know how that's going to work. E-motorbikes, e-bikes, e-boats, e-scooters. They're going to have zero carbon kitchen. I mean, they're the EV and home energy show. And I'm skeptical about some of these things and how quickly they can work. But, despite my skepticism, the manufacturers in China and elsewhere are really working hard to bring this to reality. And technology solves our problems. We're just trying to move towards electricity a little bit before it's time. But ultimately, they're going to be right. And we will have batteries that, last a month. But at the moment, we're still in that transition phase. So I'll be very keen to go to this on Friday, see the EV, see the electric tech solutions on offer, and tell you about it next week.
Yeah, the ideas and the concepts seem to be coming well in advance of the logistics. But anyway,
of reality, yeah.
Yes. What's the ACCC done to LG? What did LG get up to?
Well, they've been blasting them because they put out a warning. We spoke about it this a few months ago. They were saying that, look, there have been a number of house fires. There were 13 properties, including a fire that destroyed a house in Victoria, from these LG batteries, the ones that sit in your home and are charged by solar panels. And if there's an outage, I mean, Tesla has these as well, but if there's an outage, then it immediately flicks from the grid over to your home battery system. Great idea, expensive usually. Some of these work better in colder temperatures than others, but LG, some of these have been catching fire, just spontaneously catching fire. And of course, it's a real problem. Now, the ACCC put out a warning telling people that even if it doesn't say LG, contact the people that have sold you the system to find out if they've put LG batteries inside because they've recalled them. So the ACCC is blasting LG for not actually doing the job of proactively telling people because houses are burning down.
Yeah. Yeah, naughty. All right. Now, 75% of journalists fear that they could lose their job to AI.
Well, this is a report from MediaNet. There's an organisation in Australia that represents journalists, but also they send out press releases. And they're saying that they had a survey of 800 journalists and revealed that nearly 75% of them had not used generative AI in their work, but 67% believe the technology could eventually replace aspects of their jobs. Now, we did hear from Dr. Natalia Ilyushina speaking about this a couple of weeks ago, and I spoke to her as well on my show. And she's saying, look, AI is your co-worker, it's your friend. You still need to do all the work. It's like an intern, a junior assistant. And of course, it's going to get smarter and smarter. And I mean, it is writing better and better content.
But hang on. What happens when the intern knows more than the boss?
Well, then look, when that happens, then there's going to be an issue where you're going to find a lot of artificially intelligent stuff written, articles and books, but that's happening now, and people are not satisfied with the quality. So look, obviously it's going to get better, but I think humans are always going to have that extra spark of originality and creativity. This thing's meant to help you erase the drudgery and the boring, repetitive tasks. If it starts becoming smarter than us, well, maybe the future where movies show that the robots are going to take over the world, maybe that will become true. But for the time being, I think the journalists don't have too much to worry about. Stop using AI, start writing original content, and live and die by the quality of your work. Don't worry about too much about the quantity, worry about the quality.
Yeah, some original work would be suffice. There's so much cutting and pasting going on in journalism right around the world.
Absolutely.
People sitting behind keyboards and not actually going out seeking the story. But anyway, that's a discussion for another day. Now, Valentine's Day is coming up very soon. What is it, next Tuesday in Australia?
Next Wednesday for us. It's 7 days from today. And the problem is we can talk about it next week, but it's like, it'll be too late, guys. Or girls, you need to be buying stuff sometime this week. So
what about tech offers here? Have you got any?
Yeah, absolutely. Got a whole stack. So Nikon, the camera maker, mirrorless digital SLR cameras, they've got cameras in coral pink, crimson red, and Bordeaux red. So you can see that they're, unless your boyfriend likes red, it's probably a color for the ladies. I mean, that's probably the photographic equivalent of a red rose. I have one in the background over there. I'm at my friend's place, and his daughter, Balak Jewelry, does all this amazing stuff. And I thought, I always like to have these incredible backdrops, and here's a different one. But then we've got Motorola's talking about their phones, and they've got the love languages about physical touch, but they're saying, you can use phones for all these personal messages and things. There's Samsung, who've got their freestyle projector. They've got their T9 SSD. You want to have all your memories saved onto a solid state drive, or, you might want to have your folding phones, upgrade your partner's different devices. They've got, vacuum cleaners. I mean, you don't want to be giving your partner a vacuum cleaner. Let me tell you that straight. But they've got, this is one of the different things there. And also those little tags you can have on your keys to help you find things. Those tags from Apple and Samsung and Tile, they're really good, because if you're someone who perennially loses stuff, that is an awesome gift. Very cool.
Yeah, then, it's very, we've just put an Apple, what is it called?
Tag?
What's the Apple version?
AirTag.
We've put some AirTags on the kids' school bags. So, they have to travel a little further this year to get to school and get back. And so if they do leave their bag behind, it's not like it's across the road or around the block anymore. It's a little bit further. So we've got to know where it is. We've done that. That's handy to do. And on all sorts of other things that tend to have legs, mark them, make sure you can track them.
Look, I went to Floriade in Canberra last year, and my mum found a pair of reading glasses in a case, and she picked it up, put it in her bag. Because, it's millions of people. You've got no idea whose it is. There's no marker on it. And when I got home, I got this message saying there's an AirTag following you. And so I activated it, and I can hear it bleeping. And it was inside this sunglasses case. And so hidden in the back. I had to pull the back out, and there's this. So I hold my phone to it, and it says, look, here's the guy, ring. So I rang the guy. He was a student at Canberra University. And I said, well, hey, I've got your case. My mother found it at Florida. He said, oh, thank God, I lost it. And I said, well, give me your address, I'll come over. He said, yep. And I said, well, you got a story now. The AirTag worked. I mean, I returned something.
Wow. But what a story. What a coincidental story that the bloke who picked up the glasses happened to be a tech guru like you.
Well, it was my mother that picked it up. I had no idea. I mean, when we got home, I got this message on my phone saying there's an AirTag following you. I'm thinking, well, where the hell did this come from? Did somebody put an AirTag into my backpack or something? And so you can hit the button and it starts dinging, bing, 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 bing.
Wow.
So I'm looking. I went to the bag and there's this sunglasses case, and I'm tapping it and I'm looking for it, and I realized that inside there's this molded plastic or whatever. You pulled it and it stuck it inside, so obviously it wouldn't be on the edge of the case and all that. So look, amazing. And look, you've got Canon's got great stuff. There's great gifts from leather grain Apple Watch bands. I mean, there's endless amounts of stuff. Use your imagination. Look online. Amazon's got plenty of deals. Do something different. Don't give your loved ones home appliances. Do something creative and wonderful, and share the love.
All right, or do nothing. Alex Zaharoff-Reutt, great to have you on the program. We'll be watching on Saturday night. Thank you very much for your time today.
Bye-bye.
All right, fantastic. From TechAdvice.Life, the one and only Alex Zaharoff-Reutt. I am out of here. Dean Mackin will take you through for the next hour or so. We'll be back to do it again at the same time tomorrow. Let's do that. This is Chris Smith on TNT.
Where the story goes, we follow. Chris Smith on today's News Talk, TNT Radio.